Under Malcolm III Canmore and his successors, the foundations of feudalism were laid at any rate in southern Scotland. Malcolm's English wife Margaret, a saintly and very determined young woman, set herself to introduce to her husband's court English fashions and customs. Born in exile in Hungary, she was the sister of Edgar Atheling, the short-ruling and uncrowned Anglo-Saxon King of England. Margaret and her family returned to England in 1057, but fled to Scotland following the Norman conquest of England in 1066. There is a legend that Margaret, along with her family, attempted to leave England back to the continent in 1068, but her ship was caught up in a storm and she was washed ashore in Scotland, where Malcolm fell in love immediately. This is probably not the case, for evidence suggests she fled to Scotland to avoid Norman capture and only met Malcolm III in 1070. However they met, they eventually married. Margaret's power over the king was great, and she succeeded in turning him against his own way of life. Indeed, although fighting was one of Malcolm's pleasures, domestically he was a good deal less effective. In addition, as we have seen, he had strong Anglophile tendencies owing to his long stay in England and his great friendship with his uncle, Siward, and was the more ready on that account to fall in with his wife's wishes. His court servants became courtiers and persons of consequence, and court manners, as understood in Europe, were introduced. Margaret was a woman sophisticated by the standard of her own times. Gaelic she did not know and would not learn, for it was not spoken in any great court in Europe, so Gaelic ceased to be the court language, and English became the language of the Lowland court. In time, all of the Lowlands would speak the Angle language, instead of Gaelic. Gaelic would remain the language of the Highlands and Islands. Her principal efforts, however, were directed against the Celtic Culdee Church, which was an affront for her zeal and ardor for Rome. As Frank Adam aptly put it, she was a narrow-minded and ill-tempered virago, completely under the dominance of her confessor, Turgot, who had inspired her with an intense dislike of the Celtic Church. Malcolm, devoted to his half-English, half-Hungarian queen, supported her at a meeting at which the Celtic churchmen were presented with an ultimatum: conform or get out. Most chose to do the latter, and Margaret promptly replaced them with English and Norman priests. A complex diocesan clergy replaced the simple, evangelical Celtic church. Benefices were instituted. Bishops and abbots became men of wealth and eminence. Gifts of land were made to churches and monasteries, and Malcolm's generosity, inspired by his queen, started the process by which 1/3 of the richest lowland lands in Scotland was acquired by the church by the end of the 13th century. Had it not been for this process, there might have never been a Reformation in Scotland. Her grateful beneficiaries canonised her. In the Lothians and nowhere else at the time she was regarded lovingly by the people, and to this day Scotland accepts her as a saint.